Audience wants to have any questions for the panelists, please pick up in the next bar from here and pencil ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. we delve into today's candidate forum, I would appreciate it if everyone could kindly switch off the sound on their phones. I also want to let you know that this event is being live streamed on YouTube thanks to LexMedia. I am Anil Ahuja, the president of IGIG, representing the Indian Americans getting in The mission of IGIG is to actively reach, educate, and encourage other Indian Americans to participate in the governance of the town of Lexington and its committees. I'm a member of the Appropriation Committee and a town meeting member from Precinct 5. So if you are in Precinct 5, you can vote for me. So it brings me immense joy to welcome you to IGIG's 5th annual Townwide Candidates Forum. This year, our collaboration extends to esteemed organizations, namely the Indian Americans of Lexington, IAL, Chinese Americans of Lexington, CALEX, East Lexington Community Association, ELCA, Japanese Support Group of Lexington, JPLEX, and Lexington Lyceum Associates. Advocates, sorry. I would like to acknowledge the presence of State Representative Michelle. We are equally delighted to have the participation of all the candidates from the town-wide contested races, marking a crucial juncture for civic engagement. It is important to note that all the organizations joining us today adhere to a policy of not endorsing any candidates. This ensures a fair and impartial platform for the exchange of ideas. In our pursuit of fostering civic engagement and supporting democracy, IGIG has sought partnership with various organizations this year. The collaboration not only extends the spirit of civic involvement across diverse demographics and communities, but also provides much needed support to townwide candidates. Often burdened with numerous forums, these candidates can find themselves discouraged, hindering the democratic growth process. So whether you come for the samosas, Sanjay, I'm mentioning you, or the stimulating discussion, we are confident that you will leave this afternoon with a better understanding of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for Lexington. Rosemary Trowbridge, please raise your hand, from Lexington Lyceum Advocates, is the timekeeper for today. She will raise a yellow card when 30 seconds remains, and the red card when time is up. All candidates are expected to comply. So this is for all the candidates. Please introduce yourself. What are your personal and professional credentials that make you qualified for this position? And what is motivating for you to run for office? Let's start from here.
Hello. Oh, that's a word. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Johan Lindborg. I'm the father of 2 kids that either have been or are in the Lexington public school systems. And I'm a dual Swedish-US citizen. I moved to the United States in 2001. Education, no one has asked me that for many years. I have a triple major in economics, marketing, and business administration and an MBA. I have worked in the pharmaceutical industry since 1995. I moved to Lexington in 2011 for professional reasons, and the reason we picked Lexington was partly because Lexington offered an excellent education. As my son has Down syndrome, that is something that's very important to me. And I believe in a common sense approach to learning, and as such, I believe that you have the best opportunities for learning when parents are well informed what's going on in schools, and that students are supported and give opportunity to succeed on their merits. Thank you.
Nice to have you here, and I agree with everything that you just said. So I'm Deepika Sani. I am a current school committee member. I've finished 2 terms. I'm asking for your vote for the 3rd term. My daughter wonders why, but I say that if I don't stay here and worry about the 6,800 kids here, I'm coming to your university and I'm worrying about you and your friends. So she's like, okay, stay there, do that. So, as I said, I'm the mother of 2 recent LPS graduates. I'm a proud resident of Lexington and a naturalized citizen of the US. Though I was born in India. So, I'm the current vice chair, as I mentioned. I'm a Sikh by religion, though there's a lot of Catholicism mixed up somewhere in there because I did all my primary schooling in Catholic schools. Apparently, I'm also the alpha leader for my big dog, and I'm the servant for my 2 tiny cats. So that's me. So what makes me most qualified for the job? Besides the experience that I also have an MBA. I have a master's in information systems. I just got a master's in education, and I got that during COVID because I was fortunate to be able to be going to school and learning about things that would help whatever was happening in my school district. And what makes me most worthy of this position is I have made worry a super power. I worry a lot, and then I deal with it through either finding out more, researching more, and trying to figure out solutions. So that's me in a nutshell. More in the other questions. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who's hosting this candidate forum. A little bit about myself. Many years ago, I was a public school teacher in Massachusetts, teaching high school history. I have 3 children. All 3 attended Lexington Public Schools kindergarten through high school. I'm a past president of the Bowman, Clark, and LHS PTOs, and I've been a town meeting member representing Precinct 4 since 2014. I co-chaired the 2 most recent Yes for Lexington debt exclusion campaigns that secured funding to renovate Diamond and Clark, build the LCP, rebuild Hastings, and rebuild the main fire station. It's an honor to serve on the Lexington School Committee representing our students, staff, family, and community members. And during my tenure on the school committee, we redesigned the homework policy to better balance academic demands with the social and emotional needs of our children. We adopted new elementary math and literacy curriculums. We completed a master school facilities plan. We implemented new school start times. And we began work on one of the biggest projects in Lexington history, a new or renovated LHS. I'm seeking re-election to continue addressing the many challenges facing LPS. As the chair of the LHS School Building Committee, my focus is on taking a new LHS from the planning stages to the building stage. I plan to continue work on our DEI issues, including addressing and narrowing our achievement gaps. Barriers to success have no place in Lexington. And LHS graduation requirements have not been updated since the early 1990s, and this is the time for us to determine what kind of high school we want for our students. Not just the building itself, but what kind of education we want to take place in that building. And I look forward to continuing to serve our students, parents, and educators. Thank you.
So I'm Jill Hay, and as Deepika said, I also am just completing my 2nd term on the select board and looking for your vote to continue on to a 3rd. My background is as a labor and employment attorney. I work both in private practice and as in-house counsel for a 5,000 employee unionized workforce. And I also have served in town meetings since 2006. Originally for Precinct 4, and then the last 6 years on the select board. I also am an alumni of many PTAs, including the president of the Bridge School PTA, and pretty much every debt exclusion and yes campaign that we have done for every school project we have done in the 21st century. I've also worked on a breadth and depth of projects across the community, both committees for the town, the board of the Lexington Education Foundation, the board of Temple Isaiah. So I come to this with a large picture view of the community. We are, in fact, a very strong community, and I think one of the strengths...
Would Steve please come to the front desk? Would Steve please come to the front desk? Thank you.
I was going to say, I'm not Steve, so and I hope none of you are. But really what makes this community work is the volunteerism and the engagement of everybody here at the table and in the room. And so my dedication to doing this job is actually to continue to work with all of you. We have a couple of really unique challenges that are coming up in the next few years. We are engaging, as Kathleen said, in the largest capital project that we have ever undertaken. And we are also, as we all just lived through on the news all day, every day for the last 2 weeks, sort of a heightened era of union activity and union strength. And that is also something that is going to play into our budgeting over the next few years. So the combination of my experience having been the capital expenditures chair, I forgot to mention that, for 5 years, and my labor background, I think actually helped bring me some unique perspective that I feel I can really add to the community. So that is why I'm running.
Hi everybody, I am Cindy Ahrens and I am running for Select Board because I have a vision to build a better Lexington for everyone. Sustainable, affordable, resilient. What does that mean? There are many ways that Lexington can be a leader in sustainability initiatives that will save money for the town, provide healthier and more resilient and a more inclusive community. We can lead on a lower cost, reimagined high school that can save $25 million in cost if we maximize state and federal and other rebates and incentives. We can optimize our transportation networks so that they serve the variety of needs that our residents have. We can build connected, inclusive, and vibrant places to live. We can create healthier and more energy efficient housing for everyone that costs less. I'm a trained engineer. I've worked in the telecommunications industry for many years, and I bring strong analytical, practical, data-driven skills to the work that I do every day. I have experience building trust and getting buy-in with others that may have different priorities, and I bring residents and experts together to solve problems. I'm proud of my work of sustainability in Lexington. I've advocated for the health of our residents and co-founded the Lexington Clean Heat Alliance. I've led campaigns for successful bylaw changes that will result not only in lower greenhouse gas emissions in our buildings, but will lower long-term costs. I've led the campaign to divert food waste at all of our Lexington public schools. And I'm a speaker and educator on waste reduction and building electrification in many communities across the state. As Select Board member, I will have the ability to leverage, encourage, support, and amplify the work of many passionate residents who share the same values I have for an inclusive and resilient Lexington. I truly want to help as many people as I can. Every day I'm thinking about the future of our kids and our grandkids, but I'm optimistic that we can honor the rich history of our town, lower our bills, help lift everybody up, all while addressing the issues of climate change. My name is Cindy Ahrens, and I'm asking for your vote to represent you on the Select Board. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Melanie Thompson, and I'm running for re-election to the Planning Board. My background has been in corporate marketing, advertising, and real estate, and I've been a member of the Planning Board for the past 3 years. When I was first elected, there was a very steep learning curve, as I think there would be for anyone new on this complicated board. During my first year, my planning board education involved trying to take everything in and understand what town planning, development, zoning, and land use was all about. It takes a commitment to learning and a process of well-researched decision-making that ensures you have a clear understanding of what's before you. The reason I'm running for re-election is because I want to continue to be part of the conversation and the decision-making process on the types of comprehensive issues that impact our community. Zoning creates borders around structures and determines what part of the landscape gets developed. As a member of the planning board, it's important to take concrete steps to address the legacy of zoning, which has typically been exclusionary. I want to continue to help seek ways through the planning process to make our community as welcoming as we assert it to be. As a member of the planning board, I want to continue to improve and update our zoning practices to ensure our community meets or exceeds today's standards. Again, my name is Melanie Thompson. I'll have more about me later, but I'm asking for your vote for planning board. Thank you.
Please hold your applause to the end. Hello, my name is Michael Schombacher. I have been a registered architect for 15 years. I've practiced architecture for over 20 years. I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Virginia. I'm currently missing the basketball game, so if anyone knows the score, please don't let me know. I also have a master's degree from Rice University in Houston, so if you see that weird 713 number, that's mine. So, reasons that I'm running for planning board again. I'm committed to economic development in Lexington. I think it's critical, as we talk, everyone has brought up things like the high school. How do we pay for things like the high school? We pay for the things like the high school either through our residential tax base or we pay for them through a commercial tax base. The Hartwell upzoning that I voted for on town meeting and supported on the planning board is critical to increasing our commercial tax base so that we can afford all of the projects that we like. I'm also a committed housing advocate. I was one of the people who was, we worked very hard to advance the MBTA community legislation last spring with the planning board and through town meeting. That was a critical step towards helping the severe housing crisis that we have in all of Metro Boston, and we have to do our part as a town to help out everyone, and that was just the first step. And one of the reasons why I would like to be re-elected to the planning board is to continue that work and think very carefully about how this town can add different scales of housing and integrate it into town and make sure that it's done very wisely. Thank you.
Oh, hi, my name is Lynn Johnson. I've been Lexington resident, Lexington public school parent, and volunteer for 19 years. I was born and grew up in Beijing, got my undergrad degree from Peking University, and an MBA from Columbia Business School. I worked in corporate treasury department at Hartwell in the New Jersey headquarters, and then in Germany. Since we moved to Lexington in 2005, I have volunteered in PTAs and PTOs and was Hastings PTO co-president and volunteered in many other roles as well in schools. I co-founded Lexington Public School Green Teams, volunteered for Clean Heat Lexington Alliance. I'm also a town meeting member for Precinct 8 and a member of the Sustainable Lexington Committee. I've contributed to school policy changes and town bylaw amendments, including zoning bylaw amendments. I attended planning board meetings often for the past 8 years. I'm very familiar with the board's work. We have a housing crisis and a climate crisis. I look forward to the opportunity to serve our beloved town and actively seek solutions that will make Lexington the leafy, healthy, sustainable, and welcoming town it strives to be, while creating the much-needed affordable and attainable housing. Maybe I'm an idealist, but I believe we can do both, and that we need to do both. Thank you for coming today. I'm very excited to meet you today. We'll see you again. My name is Lynn Jensen. Hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Please hold your applause.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming in here. I'm sure you have all kinds of great questions for after. My name is Tina McBride. I'm running for planning board. I was born and raised in Lexington, graduated from LHS, traveled the world, received a BA in anthropology from Columbia University, worked in New York, and returned in 2000 to raise my own family. I grew up in a large working class family, mixed heritage, here in Lexington, and I'm now raising my own mixed race family here. I've spent my life working for social, sustainability, and environmental justice in mostly unpaid jobs. Co-founder of the LPS Green Team's composting in a couple of schools, food rescue, and food share programs. I care deeply about the effects of waste and climate change, particularly in BIPOC communities here and around the world. I'm a town meeting member, and I've been following the planning board, attending meetings for years, and have proposed and collaborated on a number of bylaw changes and amendments, including the demolition delay and a neighborhood conservation district. I support affordable housing that's inclusive, environmentally sustainable, and feels good to those residents who live there and who live nearby. I believe planning is of vital importance for the quality of life for all Lexingtonians, and the planning board can achieve sustainability, housing diversification, and inclusivity by drafting and implementing zoning bylaws and policies with those issues as priorities. I'm running for planning board because my background, my lived experiences, and ability to listen deeply to others will help us reach our goals and set forth in the town's comprehensive, as set forth in the town's comprehensive plan. My name is Tina McBride, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Please let's hold the applause until the very end. Thank you. I would like to welcome Mona Roy to start off by asking the school committee the first question.
And could we ask candidates to hold the microphone close to your mouth so that everybody in the back can hear too? Thank you.
So I'll be asking the school committee, I'll kick it off with the first question to the school committee, and I'd like to thank the school committee candidates for running. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of self-sacrifice to spend so many hours thinking about putting the needs of children first. So I want to first thank all of you for stepping up to run. We're not allowed to applaud, but I'm applauding in my head. So thank you. So let's get at it. The Boston Globe's 4-part investigation into literacy struggles in Massachusetts schools specifically highlighted Lexington Public Schools' devastating failures using debunked literacy curriculum interventions and special education practices in 3 of 4 articles, while the recent school committee meeting on literacy featured heartbreaking testimonies from Lexington Public School students detailing the tangible harm that they experienced. So my questions are, what proactive measures and close oversight and progress monitoring should the school committee take to avert future harm? How can you support measures to address the already harmed older students who are currently suffering and struggling to learn how to read and write? And I know it's a difficult question, but does the school committee bear any responsibility for accountability in this context? And will the school committee hold the superintendent accountable for closing the achievement gap among our most vulnerable learners? I will start with Kathleen.
All right, thank you. There were a lot of parts to that, so I'm going to try to see if I've got them all. I just want to say that it was difficult to hear those that testimony that we had at our school committee meeting in January, and if it was hard to hear, that's this much, and I can only imagine how hard it was to get up and to say those things. And I have great respect for and admiration for everyone who could do that. I think it's important for the school committee on our part to support our teachers and administrators as they engage in thoughtful explorations of alternatives as part of the curriculum review process, and to make sure that we proceed with all due haste. We heard in the presentation that a curriculum review process does not mean nothing happens and nothing changes until the end. As we go through it and we determine these are things that can change, we need to implement those changes. An example of that was when we adopted the Foundations curriculum, or the literacy program for the early elementary grades. That was a very phonics-based program to rectify a shortcoming that we had. And in addition to making sure that is a reality, we also heard about the monitoring of students going forward, and students going all the way up to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We heard that, I think it was called the STAR reading assessment. So that started this fall. Part of the accountability is for the school committee to say, what are the results? We need to hear about it at a school committee meeting. We also heard about the DIBELS and M-class assessments. And in the presentation, it was talked about how those are shared with parents and on a formal notification if their child is falling significantly below benchmarks. I believe that that's not acceptable, and that should be shared with all parents as a matter of course. No one wants to be surprised later to find out that, oh, you were only slightly below, but not significantly below. And in terms of accountability, I mean, that is one of the chief jobs of the school committee. We approve budgets, we approve policies, and we evaluate and hire superintendents. And that ultimately is our job, and the accountability that is for you to hold for us. You hold us accountable.
So thank you, Kathleen. Because we have been on the school committee for 6 years together, so I am going to build on our answers so that we are not wasting your time. So as she said, we bear the responsibility of all the triumphs and challenges in our school district, whether it's for a child or whether it's for the whole school district. This is why we are elected, and I feel that all kinds of congratulations and commendations in any organization structure should flow downwards, but any form of criticism should flow up. So yes, we do bear responsibility and accountability. So as she said, we have 3 levers of change, which is the policy, the budget, and the evaluation of the superintendent. So keep that aside. Let's talk about solutions, because we all know through the Boston Globe, through our MCAS data, what are the ways that we can help our children and our district improve its outcomes. So some of the things are already in place, and they have been in place through our budget guidelines. I specifically pushed for a budget guideline that actually centered the academic outcomes and focus on the 4th to 8th grade students, and the logic was very simple. In the next budget year, the 4th graders of that year were actually kindergartners during 2020. So when you look at that group, those were the ones who were the most impacted. They were the youngest. So we have done our budget guidelines. All of this work happened before the MCAS, before the Boston Globe article. So we knew that we had to do work here. In terms of practical applications, there are lots of different ways that we are thinking and brainstorming about it. We will hear about it in the next school committee meeting, which is when we actually give feedback on the 130 slides, that you saw. But what I'm asking for is partnership from you all. When you raise your voices and tell us what is happening in the system, that's when we can actually understand, because your lived experiences is more closer than us sitting like on school committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika. Thank you for your question, Mona. First, I'm going to say that if you would like to meet the school committee, there's 2 things I want to work for in general. One is transparency. I believe that all teaching materials, curriculums, etc. should be electronically available to parents within 48 hours upon being asked for. Everything is on PowerPoint today. If someone asks for it, go ahead and send it out. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. Number 2, an increased focus on academic performance. What do I mean by that? I think that teaching and supporting efforts should be focused on each individual student's situation. We need to identify and remove any potential barriers. We can't solve something if we don't know what the error is. And we should maximize the performance of each student. Now, going to literacy and reading, that is of utmost importance. If a student can't read, there's no way they can succeed in school. And they can't succeed in society either. We need to take that extremely seriously. We know in LPS that 15% of students don't read at grade level. What solutions do I suggest? Number 1, full resources. Nothing can be more important than the kids learn how to read. We need to identify barriers, use tests, and find out why is there no success. Then we need to provide flexible solutions. In terms of overall resourcing, I just learned that 1st graders spend 20 hours on serious talks on topics such as identity and perspective, privilege and bias, power and oppression, social activism and global action. I would much rather spend those 20 hours and those resources on ensuring that kids can read at grade level. Those topics can wait for later.
Thank you. And I will now pass it to my colleague, Sadi Ali-Rizvi.
Thanks, Mona. Hi, everyone. My name is Ali Rizvi from Precinct 2, and I'll be asking questions for the Select Board. It's important that people come and join us and ask these questions because you can see what the answer is going to be. So all the best to all the applicants right here, all the contestants right here, and then to best to the Select Board. My first question is, what do you currently see the most pressing DEI issues in town government, and could you speak to your experiences that could help move these issues forward. I'll ask Jill to take the first dib at this question, and then Cindy.
Thank you, Ellie. So I think, and it pains me some to say it, but I think that the largest issue that we continue to face in our DEI agenda is the continuing underrepresentation of the diversity of our community, both in our elected and appointed boards, but also in our staff. And this is something that the select board has flagged. We have brought up repeatedly in our goal setting and in our action plans. We have worked to expand the recruiting. Those of you who are town meeting members, I see a lot of you here, you'll notice that you now get all of the job listings that used to simply go to recruiting outlets. We now share those directly with all of you in the hopes of expanding your networks into our recruiting efforts. We also have adapted and changed the committee appointment and recruiting methods similarly. So I think these are both really critical pieces, but they're not enough. We also have pushed for, and we have now, a DEI Chief Equity Officer. One of the big issues that we need to work on is further empowering and authorizing her and her work within the community. The select board does not directly supervise staff other than the town manager, but we are working in our expectations with him to see further empowerment of that office. We also this year have pushed, and there will be a budget for the first time for the Chief Equity Officer to be able to empower her to take real actions in the community. All right, I'm going to speed it up. I will say the other big issue that I see, and this brings me personal distress as well as distress as a select board member, and that is the rise of anti-Semitism, which we are seeing unfortunately everywhere and increasingly in Lexington, and that is a terrible situation that I think we need to address. We need to work with the schools, we need to work with our partners in law enforcement, and we really need to address it. 12 seconds on what my experience in this is. I will say that I am, as I mentioned before, a former labor employment and employment discrimination attorney. I have worked on anti-discrimination trainings for professional organizations as well as my clients and their employees. I helped hire our chief equity officer. I helped hire our DEI consultants. I have worked with the Human Rights Committee. I have worked as a facilitator every year with the community conversations on race. And I will also say that I have advocated relentlessly for the renovation in our facility structures to include non-gendered and inclusive and accessible restroom facilities and access to all of our buildings, from the center playground, bathrooms, to the police station, and to everything else that we touch. So, thank you.
First, it's critical to leverage the knowledge and important work that the Commission on Disability, Human Rights Committee, and other organizations are doing and highlighting in this area. This includes the Collaborative Reform Group. It includes other affinity groups that are part of Lexington's Community Coalition. I've worked in a number of organizations in the region as well as state agencies that have very rightly centered climate discussion on social and environmental justice, EJ. What does that mean? It's the concept that Black and brown, low income, all other marginalized groups have been forced for a number of reasons to live near high pollution areas or have less resources to adapt to the worst effects of climate change. For example, Lexington sends our trash to a toxic polluting incinerator right next to an EJ community, environmental justice community in Lawrence. We need to make sure that we have reduced the amount of waste that we send to that incinerator. We need to make sure that we do not leave our most vulnerable populations behind as we transition to cleaner, healthier energy use. It's clear that the voices of these communities must be part of the solutions. We need to act on and have more equitable housing policies, and that includes creating housing that is healthier, highly efficient, and have a lower energy cost burden. Town meeting passed multiple resolutions on diversity, equity, and full inclusion, and that's resulted in a framework that the town's chief equity officer and the sustainability and resilience officer has produced a framework to address that. And the town's going to be conducting an internal audit this year, looking at HR policies, culture, and DEI practices. There could be changes that come out of that, and the select board should be paying close attention to those outcomes. Finally, really quickly, we need to be aware of data and developments within our schools, like the youth behavior survey and other issues with equity in teaching practices. Now, let me be very clear. The select board does not have authority over that, but we need to be paying attention to it. We have the responsibility to do that, to see what's happening if our schools is related to or affects DEI in the community at large. Thank you.
You can give an applause now, it's the end of the session. Helen for the next question.
Thank you, Ali. Hello everyone, my name is Helen Yang. I'm one of the vice presidents of KLEX, Chinese Americans of Lexington. Our president, Ho Zhe, our other vice president, Da Hua Pan, and our two board members are also here. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for IGIG to coordinate this. So I'm going to be moderating the segment for the planning board. And we're going to go in the order of Melanie, Michael, Ling, and Tina. So our first question is about the new state law called the MBTA Communities Act. It encourages multi-family housing in areas near public transit. And Lexington is one of the 177 communities that is impacted by this law. I would like the candidates to discuss your considerations for implementing it in Lexington.
Thank you. So the LPTA Communities Act was mandated by the state to see if the town, all 177 towns, would vote to amend their zoning bylaws and the zoning map to create districts for multifamily housing and or mixed-use housing developments by right. The actual term is the MBTA community shall have a bylaw that provides for at least one district of a reasonable size in which multi-family housing is permitted as of right. The planning board, we worked so hard and so long on this, but we recommended that the MBTA community zoning changes would address the town's shortage of diverse housing options, which we really need. The planning board proposed multifamily zoning to satisfy the new state requirements, and we unanimously voted to support the article, which was intended to improve incentives for developers to create multiple housing types and additional affordable housing. I'm committed to having a variety of housing options and zoning improvements for Lexington. I'm in favor of diverse housing types to make Lexington a practical option for all families, older residents, and younger people just starting out. I voted in favor in support of the special permit residential developments, and I voted in support of the MBTA community districts, both of which will create smaller, diverse housing types, including multifamily and mixed-use housing, as well as additional affordable housing units. Thank you.
Hello. So I just want to make it clear that my voting record it shows my steadfast support of housing initiatives. As Melanie pointed out, I also voted for the SBRD as well as the MBTA Community Act's bylaw last spring in annual town meeting. I think it's critical. We're at a juncture in the state right now where we're at a severe housing crisis. The MBTA Communities Act is the beginning of many steps that we need to take. As Melanie discussed, when we had our board meetings to determine where these would be located, we took a tremendous amount of public comment on that. We had a public meeting right in this room where people put stickers on the map of Lexington to determine where would be the best locations. That effort that we took to include the public was invaluable in our sort of determination of where would be the best locations in town. We were very mindful of trying to make sure that we weren't excluding those locations so that they were isolated in any way. We wanted them to be a part of the town. We also pushed back on the state to make sure that we could include commercial mixed-use development. That was something that the state actually did not allow us to do. We took town center out of that as an option. We didn't include it in our numbers so that we could mandate and require that any development in Lexington Center would include mixed use. We gave a height bonus for locations outside of that because what we believe is to create these multifamily developments, we need to have mixed use so that you have a vital and sort of active community in any of these new locations. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Having lived in apartments in China, the United States, and Germany, our home in Lexington is actually the first single-family home I have ever lived in. I have lived experience of diverse housing types and housing approaches in different parts of the world. There's a pressing need for housing, especially for lower and moderate income households. I support attainable and affordable housing. I think we can all agree that that question is off the table. We all know that LPTV Act is a great starting point and has many merits. The challenge for me is that Article 34 in the last annual town meeting, we were not voting for a concept or direction of allowing multifamily housing, but a specific proposal that, in my mind, have lots of issues or opportunities for improvement. Number one is, sorry for the detail, I will go quickly. The LPTV Act in Lexington, because of it's a state mandate, Lexington is not allowed to limit the size of each developed units, so which we have no control that we are actually producing smaller units. We might not. And Lexington is only allowed to ask a very low, okay, so, sorry. So I'll be quick. So there's a limit on how much we can ask for affordable housing. We can only ask for 10% for over certain size of the development. Also, we have very limited setback. In certain areas, it's 0 feet if it has 50% of the commercial facade in the front. So it's 0 feet, only the sidewalk and the building. And as the new law requires 51% to pass this kind of bylaws, but 67% to make any adjustment. I think it makes sense that we be wise to start slow, step by step, and then see how we do, and success and lesson learned and improve. For that reason, I voted no, but I worked on with a team of town meeting members to adjust, to make amendment for Article 34. We got a lot of support, but unfortunately it did not pass. Thank you.
We know there is a pressing housing need, especially for lower and moderate income households. There is a long list of people, it just sounds so loud to me, I'm sorry. There is a long list of people that urgently need housing and a very long wait. I support diverse and affordable housing, and the MBTA Communities Act is an important first step to get communities to make the commitment to providing that housing. However, I think we need to do better and to tailor our asks based on Lexington's needs. As I mentioned, I've traveled with the eye of an anthropologist, seeing how people live all over the world. I collaborated with other town meeting members on an amendment to Article 34, believing that there are ways to not detract from, but to make it better for all residents of Lexington, as well as to create housing for seniors that want to remain in the community. I know we can create and capture other opportunities to do better. The opposition that I had, the deepest opposition that I had to the MBTA communities, I did vote against it. I felt that 5-story buildings abutting, small GI Bill capes was too much of a burden on some of our lowest income residents already. But I do see this as a starting point, an important starting point from which we can launch ourselves into supplying more very, very needed housing in Massachusetts and Lexington. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie, Michael.
Thank you, Melanie, Michael, Lynn, and Tina. So I'll pass on to Mona to ask the next question for the school committee.
Someone said I was so short that this mic stand is blocking my face, so I'll move that down. That's okay. When I lack in height, I make up for in questions. So today's forum is organized by a broad, diverse coalition with all kinds of diversity. And DEI means different things to different people with different lived experiences. We all support diversity, equity, and inclusion. But we would be remiss if we did not note the community concerns, both vocal and sometimes more muted, to recent LPS DEI initiatives. And many feel that the lack of transparency is de facto inequitable and exclusionary, given that LPS staff is majority white, even though the student body is not. What can the school committee do to support and advocate for transparency and promote community understanding? Both parts of the question are important. We'll start with Johan, and then we'll move to Kathleen and then Deepika.
Thank you, Mona. As I said earlier, about two things I want to work on. It's transparency and focus on academic performance. So thank you for the question about transparency. I think it's quite clear. I believe that the best situation is when you have parents that are fully engaged going on in the school. And I think there should be a rule that upon request, all school materials that are shown to kids should be shared with parents within 48 hours. I don't see an issue with that. I went to a school board meeting last year, and we were told by the school administration that we will not tell you what we tell the kids. We will not tell the parents what we tell the kids. Quite honestly, I find that unacceptable, completely unacceptable.
Oh wait, I'm sorry, the other part of the question, what can the school committee do to promote community understanding? Because it's not enough just to share the materials. My question was two parts. I understand that your answer on transparency, but I'm asking, what would you do as a school committee member to promote community understanding?
Great question. Well, thank you for now making me sure I answer that. It's about outreach, being open and listen. Tomorrow I'm going to go to the Lexington Mosque. I'm going to hear what their thoughts are on school education. It's to reach out to all diverse groups in this community. I'm here today. And Anil, wherever you are, you have my email. Please send that out to the group here so that they can give me input as needed. The openness and the willing to listen is key.
Thank you. Next, Kathleen.
Thank you, Mona. So the school committee, just to be clear, is completely committed to transparency. Now, there's two kinds of transparency. On the school committee side, not only do we believe that it is vital for community engagement, it's the law. It is open meeting law. All of our meetings, our subcommittee meetings and our working group are open to the public with agendas that are posted 48 hours in advance. All of our emails are public records. And you can sign up on the town's website, lexingtonma.gov, for automatic notifications of meetings, and anyone can sign up for LPS's Parent Square Alert, sorry. And I just want to talk about the idea, there's two kinds of transparency. There's that transparency in government, and then there is transparency about what happens in schools, right? So sometimes it feels that people want there to be like a glass wall, and you can see into the classroom at any moment to see what is going on. That just isn't practical. We heard during our very challenging negotiations with the teachers how much everyone values and loves and respects our teachers. And we have to, when we hire the best teachers, we have to respect their ability to get the job done. And I agree that nothing is more important than literacy, with one exception, and that is children's physical safety. In our youth risk behavior survey, we heard that 62% of transgender or gender nonconforming students report feeling hopeless and sad every day for 2 weeks or more in a row. That is devastating. And even worse is 43% of transgender students report suicide ideation. And if there is anything that keeps me up at night, the top of the list, it is 43% of those students reporting suicide ideation. And it's not, and yes, that is middle school, but nobody becomes transgender. They were transgender in elementary school. So the problems that we have in a society where you're not accepted, it starts at that very young age. And in terms of the curriculum, it's not as if, it's like, here you go, here's US history. This is not how it works. Everything is not on a PowerPoint. We have inventive, creative, passionate professionals. And if we hamstring them so that everything has to fit in a box and has to be ready to be sent out at a moment's notice, our children, they won't be getting the education that I know you want them to receive.
Thank you, Kathleen. So I would like you all to go to my website, which is Sani for Lexington, not right now. When you're home, Sani for Lexington, and go to the News Views tab, because I have reports and memos that I have written either through graduate school or I have authored while I was on the school committee for my school committee colleagues and the superintendent. These reports are where I'm able to say all that I have to say and give all the research background for those reports. Please go and see these, because I cannot do justice to this question in whatever, 1.5 minutes. So I feel that DEI requires partnerships, instruction, practices, and people. We are working very hard in Lexington Public Schools to actively diversify our workforce. We try and hire diversely, we try and go to places where we don't go to the usual places looking for our teachers and educators. We are spreading and trying to get new teachers and new experiences and voices in. We have, we've had Johnny Gold, we have hired diverse representation educators throughout every grade and in every school as far as we can do this. We try, we don't always get them. Practices and policies, we've got the diverse representation policy that's at the decision-making level. In practices, we've been giving training to our teachers and educators. Lexington Learns Together is a couple of days worth or a day worth of workshops and trainings that we give. We send to DEI principals. I feel there are some gaps. One of the gaps that I feel is that I do not hear nearly enough from our medical parents or our English language learner parents. We hear from our CPAC parents. Jess has our email. I hope she is comfortable getting the responses, at least if not the content, the timeliness. I do not hear nearly enough from our MEDCO and our ELS parents, and I'm hoping that if I continue on the school committee, I can push to get those community voices into our school committees as well. Partnerships with you all, all the chairs have received emails from me. I would say you've received emails from me, and where I'm trying to push out budget information, I'm trying to push out any form of information that comes from the school committee. If you want me to push information, let me know. But go to my website, because Rosemary has flagged me.
Yes.
Did I get it right?
Yes. So I actually have a couple follow-up questions on that. Just to clarify, do you know? Firstly, Kathleen, thank you for highlighting that devastating statistic about suicidal ideation for our transgender middle school students. That's very, very important. Did you have the opportunity to look at that YRBS student data for the special education students? I think you probably have it.
I haven't, yes, and it is also higher for special education students. The 2 minutes, it just gone.
I know, that's okay. I just I only mentioned it because you mentioned literacy, yes. and so it just triggered me asking that question. And then I didn't quite catch about community understanding. I heard a little bit from Deepika on the website, but would you like to add anything to your community understanding? I know you advocate for transparency.
No, of course, absolutely. We have so many groups, and we go to the PTA president's meeting once a month, and 2 school committee members do. But perhaps we need to be more assertive in reaching out to the presidents and saying, can we attend your PTA meetings? Can we engage with parents in that way? We have so many different community groups. Instead of waiting to be asked, we can do the asking. Say, can we please attend your meetings and talk about what's going on in the schools? and just make more use of various social media. There's the Lexington list. Really put it out there that no, we want to hear from you. We want to engage.
Thank you so much. Yes, did you want to add something?
So we all know that Dr. Hackett is an English teacher, former English teacher, right? So her communications tend to be very wordy, and I've been trying to get less wordy because it's hard to translate for people in other languages, but that's also one thing.
Thank you. Thank you for noting that we have a lot of people where English is not their first language. And Anil is showing some index cards here. If anyone has any questions, he would like to write down a question, please do write it down. We'll be taking questions. And I believe I'll pass it to my colleague, Ali Pai.
Hi, the second question for the select board. Building a high-quality new high school is an important priority for the town. In your role as a select board member, what steps would you take to make sure the cost doesn't balloon from high but necessary to stratospheric as happened in our neighboring town, Newton? So the first shot, Cindy and then Jill.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Ali. And whoever came up with the word stratospheric to describe potential cost of the high school. Thank you. So there's two pieces of the puzzle here, right? There's how much does the high school cost in the end, and then how much does it cost the taxpayers? So first, I'm going to keep, as chair of Sustainable Lexington, I'm going to keep doing what I've already been doing, which is strongly advocate and communicate about the town's integrated building design and construction policy. Following that policy, building an efficient building, maximizing solar energy generation and energy storage, these important design features will result in more state money, more federal money, and more local and utility incentives. We can reduce the cost. I mentioned this earlier. We can reduce the cost of the building by $25 million. That is significant. Yes, it's a multi-$100 million cost, but $25 million is significant. But even better than that, by building the building that way, the way we've promoted and set policy to build, we can save the town up to $1 million a year in operational costs. That is significant. This is a very smart plan for the future. I'm also going to continue, as I've I've attended hours and hours of high school meetings, Reimagine high school meetings already, and I will continue to do that. Push for space that optimizes use. We have many, many important needs to fill that we can't fill today in our high school, but we need to do the work ahead of time, lay out all of those needs, and making sure that we're using all the space wisely, so that we're not overbuilding a building. The second part of that is how to pay for it. There's a capital stabilization fund that we've been putting new lab and life science developed commercial property tax money into. We need to continue doing that, but we need to pay attention because the lab and life science development has been slowing down. So we need to pay attention to that and make sure that in the end, we are, even though we'll need a debt exclusion, we will not be affecting the tax bases that much. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will say that the new Lexington High School will in fact be clearly the largest capital project that we have undertaken. And number one in the goals for that project are going to be the right educational program to suit our students. But we also need to look at all of the other players and all of the other community elements that come into designing and building this high school. So we have natural resources and we have recreation resources, all of which surround and are integrated in the siting of the high school. We need to make sure that those also are considered and valued and planned for. This is a building that will be a community building outside of school hours. What are the community's needs and expectations for the use of that building? And of course, we are going to follow all of our sustainable policies, including the integrated building design, as well as all of our other high energy use buildings and everything else that will go into not just the solarization, but the building materials. So how do we do all of this and stay within our budget? Well, it's not quite magic. But it is actually when you talk about being able to bring together the community, the varied interests and all of the goals, and create a collaboration, a compromise, a negotiation, and a plan that will suit the needs, the actual needs that we identify. One of the other things, and I see the yellow card, so I will just very quickly say, in every school building project that we have done, we have looked at the cost, we have looked at the expectation that we get when we actually go out to bid, and then we have compared the appropriation to that, and we have entered into what we call value engineering, where we go back and we look and we say, what were the really nice things to have that maybe we can change a little, whether that comes in finishes, whether that comes in space mining, whatever it is. This is our practice. This is what we do when we look at buildings. We keep the core, we keep the essential, but we look at how we maintain the obligation that we make to the taxpayers to keep the building within the costs that we've appropriated. And another time we can, because I see my red, but I'm happy to talk about how we're planning to finance it as well.
Thank you, Cindy and Jill. And for the next question, Helen.
Thank you, Ali. So for the second question for the planning board, we'll go the other way. We'll go Tina first, and then Michael and Melanie. So increasing housing supply also means more demand on town infrastructure, including schools and roads. For schools, there are also school buildings and then staffing. And we know in certain parts of the town is already has quite a bit of traffic. So as you are thinking about increasing housing supplies, how do you balance the needs on both sides?
Big question. We are always changing, but one thing that remains the same is that Lexington, with its excellent schools, proximity to, putting it up, please, proximity to major highways and Boston, lush green spaces and conservation land, and a deep historical significance, we will see growth in demand. It happens in waves, sometimes steadily, sometimes less so. I grew up in East Lexington in a very working class neighborhood. Our family of 7 were in a house a little over 1,100 square feet with 1 bathroom. I was the 4th daughter, did not get to see the bathroom as much as I wanted to. Lexington has gone through some growing pains with some of those changes. Schools closing and then opening back up again. Farms making way for whole neighborhoods. And solar farms on old landfills. With the changes to zoning through the MBTA Communities Act, the site-sensitive development, and special residential development, we need to be constantly assessing outcomes and making adjustments. It will be important to track and use all that information and then to utilize it to inform our efforts, which we'll need to do constantly. Zoning cannot be used to prevent or restrict who lives anywhere, but only to make positive changes, to encourage new types of growth, make neighborhoods more walkable, the concept of complete streets, promote public transportation, etc. I have complete faith that we can do that.
I believe this question will be our community's decision. I think it is the planning board's responsibility to be transparent with the result of the zoning changes. Maybe we can publish a dashboard of housing developments in town under special residential developments, or under MBA Act zoning, or regular subdivision, or single-family units. So let's keep track and make the data readily available and share our successes and lessons learned. I think transparency cannot be repeated too many times here. I have heard from state representatives, Michelle Chicago and others in the state a couple of days ago on an event also hosted by Lyceum, I tried to pronounce it correctly, about housing. And I heard there are some state funding is being planned to be made available to help infrastructure improvement needed for multifamily zoning. I appreciate that. And this is mostly from what I understand, is for water lines and sewer lines. And regarding potential school crowding, I think it is a valid question for the state to answer if it would consider providing some form of relief, like it would plan for sewer and water lines. And our town will need to decide what magnitude of growth in housing units is desirable and manageable. Transparency in data is helpful to inform on our decisions.
So this is obviously a very important question that we need to address, and one of the things that we need to be very mindful of, particularly when it comes to the school system, is that as a planning board, we're not actually allowed to take the number of families that might be in a development into consideration when a particular development is in front of us. That is illegal. So we need to be very careful about the way that we approach these kinds of issues. They're obviously very sensitive, and we need to be very mindful. I mean, it's an interesting conversation we're having. Talks about how expensive the high school is going to be, and commercial development is one of the ways that we make the high school less expensive to the residential taxpayer. That also being said, we talk about the school department, and I don't want to speak for the school department, but the numbers that I've seen is that the projected enrollment in the schools is actually projected to go down. That doesn't necessarily take into effect any of the new developments that we may see, but there is some flexibility in the way that we're approaching the school developments, or the new schools that we built, the new Hastings, Estabrook. Those are larger than needed to be at the time. The high school is also projected to be larger than we need right now as well. So if we take all of that into consideration, as Lynn and Tina are suggesting, the planning board does need to think about those, but we need to always have a sort of grain of salt when we do that, because we're, again, not really allowed to take that into direct account. And again, we do have some availability with the state to ask for help when it comes to a new development that may need a new sewer line or a new water line. That burden will not completely fall onto the town. We can actually ask for assistance in that regard as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to say that I support small local businesses and mixed-use areas throughout Lexington and in our downtown area. The mixed-use developments into MBTA communities district so that residents can walk to shops, provide important customer base for our local businesses, which we see we really need. So a vote against the MBTA communities is kind of a vote against balanced housing. We put incentives into the mixed-use development of the village overlays created by the MBTA bylaw that would help prevent the further erosion of our commercial districts and help increase our tax revenue base to support many of the services that our town needs and expects. In addition, the Hartwell Ave area redevelopment will result in millions of dollars of new commercial property taxes, which will be placed in the capital stabilization fund, reducing the impacts of the new high school finances and future residential tax bills. So both of my planning board and town meeting voting record shows my commitment to economic and balanced development. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tina, Lynn, Michael, and Melanie. I'm going to pass it on to Mona for the next school committee question.
The order for this will be Deepika, Johan, and Kathleen answering. So how can the school committee guide the design and the development of the new high school in line with the values that you've said? And what would your leadership role be? And how would you ensure that the design is aligned with our community values? And we'll start with Deepika.
Thank you, Anna. So the policies really help us over here, right? So we have the Sustainable Lexington Health and the Select Board. In fact, it was a joint, it was a joint effort by all of us to come up with this policy. I was trying to understand all the different red line items or red list items, and red line is also quite accurate in this case. But so what happens is that all these policies help sort of set guardrails, right? One is the diverse representation, so we're pushing for like who are the vendors who are coming in, or who are the construction architects, etc., who are coming in, and can they understand what our diverse student population wants and needs? So we are currently in the visioning phase. We have there have been a number of workshops, focus groups, where diverse people, sort of from like interest, stakeholders, we have students, we have parents, we have staff from municipal and our schools, we have people who have nothing to do with schools anymore because they're empty nesters. We are all coming together and we are brainstorming and trying to highlight user requirements that nobody would be able to just figure it out closed in one closed room. So this is a process which is very, very participatory, very engaged. If you haven't taken part, please find a way to take part because we need all these ideas to make the best school. So how will I personally help is my focus over the past 6 years has always been what is our budget? How are we spending the money? And I've been on the finance subcommittee. Kathleen knows I love to sit in the numbers. And also, by the way, one of the memos on that website is about what we do, how we look at warrants, how we look at what comes to us as every 2 weeks we get warrants, which means what is spent in the schools actually comes to us for approval. And I'm usually the one who digs in the details. It's a great resource for you too, by the way, if you become a school committee member or anybody else. So my push was, okay, how do we get a finance teams onto our town finance teams onto the school building committee, and was able to push for inclusion of our finance teams. And I'm still sending them questions about how are we paying for this, so who's looking at that, and we will continue to come, Kathleen, regardless if I'm on school committee or not.
Thank you. Great question, Mona. I think I would like to answer that from an inclusion perspective. As I mentioned, my son Cooper has Down syndrome, and it is a pleasure to walk with him and a privilege to walk with him through town because there's so many people that goes, "Hey Cooper," and I used to go, "How do you know? How do you know his name? Who are you?" And I took my son to my daughter's karate training, and a little kid comes up, "Hey Cooper," and he knows how to interact with him. He's nonverbal, but he knew what to do and how to interact with him. So I gave him a look, and he says, "Hey, I'm his reading buddy." And it is so comforting to hear, to see the community be supported, and know who he is, and know how to interact with him. And currently, the way I understand is when you have Down syndrome and you come up to high school, you're sent outside the district to a different school. I would love to see the new high school take inclusion to the next level and include them, as they've done so far, include them in regular classes as much as possible, depending on ability, of course. So that's something I would like to think about, but that's my lens. We have lots of lenses here across, so I would love to hear your opinions. How can we build this high school the better? I don't have a fancy website yet, but I'll build one tomorrow. And there will be an input function where you can say, hey, here's what I would like to see in the high school. Thank you.
So one of the first things that the school committee will do, and we're going to take this up later this month or early March, is we approve the education plan. And this is part of the MSBA process. And this is a plan that informs school designs, or it helps inform school designs that are responsive to current learning and teaching practices. And one of the things that we would do is we would think about people like Cooper. And how are we making sure we are responsive to all of our students? You know, what kind of integration can we have with the lab program? What about the DLP program? So we are meeting all of our students' needs. As the chair of the school building committee, I work with our OPM, or it's our owner's project manager, Doran Whittier, and our designer, SMMA, at our weekly school building committee meetings. They happen every Monday at 12 o'clock, so I hope everybody tunes in at some point. As we're going through the feasibility and schematic design, and I know this is very lingo heavy, this is all through the MSBA, and I encourage everyone to check out the MSBA's website to see how this process works. Feasibility and schematic design is fancy words for what can we do and what are we going to do. And the school building committee will be taking votes on building decisions. And as the school committee representative, I don't view that as this is not Kathleen Lenahan's vote. I am representing the school committee. So of course I will get input and feedback in a public meeting from my school committee colleagues about how to proceed. I've asked our chair, Sarah Cuthbertson, to set aside time on an agenda this spring for an in-depth presentation on where we're at with the project. And tentatively, we're looking towards townwide debt exclusion in November or December of 2025. And as I said in my introductory remarks, I co-chaired the last 2 debt exclusion campaigns, which at the time I thought were massive. It's sort of like when I remember when I brought my second baby home from the hospital and I thought, what did I think was so hard about only having to take care of one child? You know, like in comparison, the LHS project is so much bigger than those other debt exclusions. But working together as a community, we will help everyone understand why it is absolutely crucial for our students and community. Because we will be building a high school that, knock on wood, could be educating our Lexington students in the 22nd century. Think that right? Yeah, 22nd century.
Thank you so much for those responses. When was our last high school built? When is that?
In pieces.
In pieces, yeah. I think it was in the 50s. Thank you so much. I'll pass it to my colleague, Kathleen Rusby.
Thank you, Mona. The next question for the select board. The Ellen Stone building has been empty for more than 15 years, and the town has recently allocated funds for a design study. As a select board member, how might you advance the role of this building in our community as a valued resource? Jill, maybe you first, and then Cindy, please. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So, this is a question that's, somewhat near and dear to my heart. Those of you who have been working on the building know that this was a project that I was happy to advocate putting back on the agenda as a select board member. And I served as the first liaison from the select board to the Allen Stone Building Reuse Study Committee. I also was recently able to serve on the selection committee for the design firm that is working now to look at the realities of what is possible with the building. The building is a historic treasure for Lexington, and we often talk about being really conscious of our own history. And I've often heard people say, we need to remember that history in Lexington didn't stop in 1776, and I think this is a really good example of that. The select board biannually sets its goals. And currently, among our goals are the following statements: that we would like to continue to provide opportunities to create and share history, to maintain and improve our physical assets, and to provide access to a vibrant mix of businesses, services, and events. Revitalization of the Ellen Stone Building gives us all of that. And it does so in a way that can include some lesser-known pieces of our history. It can revitalize the East Lexington community. It gives us an anchor to our new cultural district, which runs from approximately the Ellen Stone Building to and through the Battle Green, providing us another opportunity for tourism as well as local activation. So I will continue to actively advocate for the renovation of this treasure of a building, and do so in a way that is fiscally responsible and not entirely on the burden of the taxpayer. So it is a balance of need and ability.
Thank you. First, let me thank all of the, I haven't had a chance to do this, all the sponsors of today's event, including the Lexington Lyceum, East Lexington Community Association, JP Lex, CalLex, and IGIG and IAL, of course. There's so much wonderful history in the Stone Building, and I wish I had lived here and had my kids young enough to use it as a branch library when it was there. So I haven't had the chance to be in that building. But you know who has? Ralph Waldo Emerson has been in that building. Theodore Parker. Abolitionists have spoken there to educate the community. It is a community jewel. I've got some experience finding funding, grants that can help municipalities and organizations help with their community history. And so while we definitely should be, I would support devoting town resources to preserve this building, I think we also need to be leveraging other opportunities, state and local grants or even foundations for from outside of Lexington. But without a doubt, the Lexington Lyceum advocates should be a partner in that. I think the work that they have done already to bring us together and talk about the issues at hand has been really, really wonderful. And I'm very eager for that to continue in a rehabilitated stone building. Thanks.
Thank you, Ali. For our next question for the planning board candidates, we'll go in the order of Melanie, Michael, Ling, and Tina. So the next question is, serving on the planning board requires deep knowledge of the town and zoning. What background and training do you have to make you a great candidate for this position?
Thank you, Helen. Well, as a product of the Lexington Public Schools, I've called this community home for as long as I can remember. I started out at Harrington School, the old Harrington School, and I have over 2 decades of experience in corporate marketing, advertising, and real estate. I have an MBA in business, and becoming an advocate for housing initiatives and equitable zoning policies here in Lexington, I think I bring a varied overview of these issues to my role on the planning board. Along with my professional positions, once on the planning board, I've attended many workshops and training sessions focused on continuing education in planning, land use, zoning roles and responsibilities of planning and zoning boards, subdivision controls, site plan reviews, fair housing, CHAPA, and many more. So it's a lot of education. Beyond my elected roles, I've actively engaged with various town committees, including the Housing Partnership Board, worked on the Comprehensive Plan, Transportation Advisory Committee, and Ad Hoc Diversity Advisory Task Force. Representing Precinct 5 in town meeting, I've been actively involved in shaping policies that promote inclusivity and equity. I've worked for several years in helping to plan the celebration of MLK Day, fostering a spirit of unity and dialogue within our community. So I'm very involved with the people and the spirit of Lexington. Thank you.
Yes, so as I mentioned, I am an architect. I've been practicing for 20 years. And in that time, I have worked on a variety of projects. I've worked on public projects for cities and colleges and universities, as well as I've worked for developers doing multifamily residential buildings. And in that time, what that has given me is the experience to understand what works and what doesn't, particularly when we think about, as we set our dimensional controls, it's vital to have someone like myself understand that when we set a particular height, that someone can actually build to that height and it is marketable, and we get those units. Because if we set those dimensions incorrectly, we get nothing, and we get no new housing as a result. So someone like myself who has that kind of experience is particularly vital to the sort of operations of the board. That being said, I've also worked on public projects. I did a branch library for the Boston Public Library System in Dorchester. That required working with the Boston Public Library System, the Public Facilities Department in the city of Boston, also the local library, the branch librarians, the neighborhood. So I have a long sort of experience bringing people together in order to build great projects and to bring communities together as a result. So I think that depth of experience is really incredibly important to how the planning board works and understanding how to sort of work with planning staff as well and be productive in that process. Thank you.
I would say the town has very competent professional planning staff and town council. The planning board's role is to guide the planning staff in prioritizing work to realize the comprehensive plan and visions of our residents, which is you all. The planning board's role is also to carefully review project proposals and their impact, and make sure the long-term decisions related to land use, create, amend, and implement zoning bylaws, regulations, and more importantly, to promote citizen participation in the planning process. Now, with the many changes going through, I think the planning board needs new voices and talent who are analytical, who ask critical questions, and look into details and create solutions that promote housing, sustainability, and inclusiveness, who push for data and fact-based decision-making, who listen to you, all residents, represent you and all residents. The work I did at Honeywell's corporate headquarters was analytical and needed cross-departmental collaborations with executive-level professionals in tax, legal, accounting, business planning, and I also work in teams on projects working with major investment banks. As well, the leaders in LPS Green Teams and a member of Sustainable Lexington Committee, I'm passionate about incorporating climate solutions in all decisions we make, as individuals, as a town. When the planning board works on our housing solutions, it is especially important to anticipate and plan for the long-term effect of our decisions and create a feedback loop to adjust and improve as we see projects coming through the pipeline. I think my experience from working at a global conglomerate, my years of serving the town on different capacities, town meeting, Sustainable Lexington Committee, Green Team, Clean Heat Alliance, and also attending town meetings and proposing bylaw and zoning amendments have prepared me very well to serve on the planning board.
Okay, there are always new developments and legislation coming out of the federal and the state government that will need to be learned and incorporated into how we can make use of them to the benefit of Lexington, like the one we learned about at the Lyceum's Affordable Housing Forum the other night. There's always things coming up the pipeline, and we have to figure out how to make them work. I've been a town meeting member since 2018. I've been attending planning board meetings for years before that. In addition to being the proponent for a citizen's article to extend the demolition delay in 2015, I've been involved in multiple articles and amendments. I was a member of the working group that authored the Turning Mill Neighborhood Conservation District, and I am a Turning Mill Neighborhood Conservation District committee member. I've worked in corporations, I've been a school teacher. I've garnered a fair amount of institutional knowledge over the years. I know that Lexington has a well-trained and knowledgeable planning staff. As we've seen by example, the citizens that have filled the role of planning board member have contributed many talents and skill sets, but I think few, if any, are professional planners per se. I think that basically we need to know what the rules are. We need to follow the vision of citizens in the comprehensive plan and find collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie, Michael, Ling, and Tina. I'm going to pass on to Mona for the next question for the school committee.
Another hot topic that came up is the reduction or change in LHS graduation requirements. This has been a decades-long discussion with seemingly no movement. How might you, if you're on the school committee, craft a policy which provides for more flexibility, but also putting in guardrails to ensure that students are not denied access to core curriculum classes, including math, science, and also higher level courses such as AP. We'll start with Kathleen, then go to Deepika, then Johan.
Thank you, Mona. For this question, I went to the file in my desk for my graduation requirements file, including papers and a chart that comes from 2017. So yes, this has been something we've talked about for quite a while. I think part of the issue is, like, why is there no traction? Talking about graduation requirements and changing them, it makes people anxious because change can be scary. And I think people are envisioning something just very dramatic, like, whoop, we're gonna blow up the graduation requirements and start new. I don't think we need to do that. I think we can make small changes that can have meaningful improvements and help our students. Our current requirements, they just offer very little flexibility. I envision graduating from high school as something everybody should be able to do. And I sort of see it as like a cross-country race. If you're racing cross-country, I'm not a track person, but it seems that if you fall down, you get back up and you keep going. And all too often, it feels like instead we have it structured like a hurdles race. And in the hurdles, when I see it on the Olympics, they fall, the race is over for them. And I don't think that's acceptable for our students. And not just requirements, but a clear path to meet them. We need a more robust credit recovery system. We need summer school options. Thinking a little bit outside the box, right now, let's say things go awry in the spring. Well, you've lost that whole year. What about you get half your credit for the first semester, half your credit for the second semester, so you can bank some of that. And in terms of access to other to core curriculum and AP classes, I think this is an opportunity to expand that in conjunction with rebuilding the high school, rethinking how we do this. Right now, unlike all of our peer communities in Lexington, in order to take AP Biology, AP Chem, AP Physics, you do not take an introductory science class. You know, in all of our other peer communities, you take introductory biology, then you take AP Biology. And currently, we have 0 students on an IEP in AP Biology, only 2 in chemistry, and 0 in physics. So clearly, we have an access problem, and I think allowing students to have that option that exists in every other peer community to have those introductory classes, we will expand access to those classes.
So I've always believed that the only reason to have or create any new initiative or a new change in our Lexington public school system is when it centers student need and student benefit. And usually we find that, the state mandates or the federal mandates coming down are centering student need and student benefit. So having said that, in our school systems and in the high school, what happens is that we have some students who are more vulnerable than others. They can have had a medical issue that was unanticipated, or they are transferring in from another country, and then they have the language barrier as well. Then we also have special education students who, besides doing what they are doing in the core curriculum, have to also take other life skill type classes or support classes for which it's like a second layer of curriculum that they have to do. So there is a student need and there is a student benefit, and that is why the graduation requirements should give the flexibility to the administration and to the people who know these children the best, which is the educators, on how to help them navigate those 4 years through our college, through our school system. So we have a very, very high rate of graduation. I think it's like 98%. And I do have a fancy website, but I'm the webmaster, and I was deep in CSS code last night, so that's why I got the bags and the BIs. But I have written a couple of reports which then go into the data, the research. The DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, gives us this information as to how many are graduating, how are we doing demographically. So that information is there. But if we build flexibility, then we can actually help these kids graduate. And lastly, a big high school project is an amazing project-based learning opportunity for all. It is happening right there. We need to include that as a benefit. If we are spending whatever, 400 million, 500 million, whatever we are spending, I want to get that much worth of learning for all the kids who go through our high school during that time and even later. So I think we have an amazing opportunity to leverage that opportunity.
Thank you. So, at the risk of repeating myself, there's 2 things I want to work on, and one was transparency, and the second focus on academic performance. And I think your question goes towards academic performance. In the question here, it says, how would we ensure that students are not denied access to core curriculum classes? That seems strange to me, that anyone who's denied access. The way I look at it is, as a school, as a teaching community, you should support each individual student situation. If there are barriers, we identify them, remove them, and then we maximize the performance of each student. We're all different. Some people will do very well in standard classes, some will do well in honors, some will do well in AP. The flexibility should be that depending on your merit, you should be able to take the classes that make you successful. And that flexibility should be built into the system, and the way that work should be fully transparent. Let me give as an example of my daughter's school. My daughter takes 2, maybe 3 AP classes. You have to have a subject matter, for instance, physics teacher, recommend them to take an AP class. They sit down with academic advisor and think through, what are you doing? Is this good enough for your overall workload? My daughter works 10 hours a week at Chick-fil-A. Have you time to do that? Can you take care of it? Is that good for you? Does that work for you, for your situation? And then you devise a plan that allows them to be successful. And I think that should just be an open, transparent process. I don't see any issues there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I didn't ask the question clearly. I just wanted to know what kind of a policy, because the school committee sets policy, what kind of a, would you make any changes to the current graduation requirements policy, or I feel, because that's been a discussion for some time, would you advocate for another policy that would give flexibility for some students? I didn't quite catch that from actually anybody. I'm sorry if I didn't ask the question clearly. So I want to give everyone a chance to answer because I want to be fair.
So to be quite honest, I don't know the current policy in detail, so I can't tell you how I would change it. But my vision is that there would be a full flexibility to support each student to be as successful as possible on their merits.
So our policy manual has many pages, so I don't blame you. I believe what our policy says is a very sort of prosaic, like, graduate, if you meet graduate requirements. It doesn't go into the details. The details, when we write policy, tend to be in the implementation and execution, which then is worked out through with the staff. So this is just not something that we sit in school committee and say, okay, here's the policy, we are done, and now everybody knows what exactly what to do. So it's a collaborative process, and we have to think about it in 2-3 different ways. One, the current policy, what it is not actually allowing us to do, and second, when we start doing the big high school project, what needs to be done and how can we enable so that all of these, the high school project, education of the kids in the building next door, how can all of this happen very well. So I'm not crafting policy here, but I'm just giving you the context.
So to go back in the way back machine, when Jessie Steigerwald was still on the school committee, she noticed in the program of studies it says that the graduation requirements were voted on by the Lexington School Committee, and I want to say 1992 or 1994. Jessie being Jessie, she actually went into the minutes, which are not online, to discover that no, the school committee had not in fact voted on that. So it's a question of, do we want a set of graduation requirements that have officially and affirmatively been voted on by the school committee? And that was the impetus for that move, which I agree, yes, we should definitely do that. Right now we have something called the senior option, which says that you're supposed to take 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 4 years of social studies, 4 years of science. You can opt out of the math, science, or social studies. You are required to have 4 years of English. Very, very few seniors opt out of one of those. Why? Because the colleges that they're applying to, they require that. And we have data that says it's so few of them. One possible option, expand the senior option, you could opt out of 2. I think very, very few kids would do that, but again, it gives you that flexibility for those kids who have had some sort of issue. That's one. And then the other one, I said, perhaps you get half a credit for this one semester and half a credit for the other. That allows you to bank some of your credits. Those are just, but again, transparency, yes. This would happen with community engagement, and then some more community engagements with everybody, PTAs, in groups in town. So,
thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.
Thanks, Mona. The next question for the select board, and again, this question has two parts to it. The first part, what sustainability initiatives would you like to have in the next 3 years if you become on the select board? And number two, what are the most important steps you will take to have the town become a net zero community? Cindy, you first take it, and then maybe Jill can take it on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So it's really important to understand that this is not just about supporting sustainability or measuring ourselves against a net zero goal. It's about shaping meaningful, impactful policy that will make measurable difference in improving health and resiliency and thinking about lowering long-term costs. So the town has adopted a climate action and resilience plan, so we need to start prioritizing, working on those prioritized pieces of that. That includes, and I've said this many times, but it includes maximizing solar generation and figuring out how to incorporate energy storage when appropriate. All over the town, we really have to start thinking about this actively everywhere. I mentioned before the new high school and maximizing solar and battery storage there. That project is going to be very, very important. Working with the utilities, working with state agencies, this is going to set the stage for how we go about this going forward. We need to be more innovative about localized energy generation, and this is going to help grid resiliency. It's going to help the things that we are thinking about and worrying about. I would continue and expand the program. That I'm actually a Heat Smart Energy Advisor. I'm one of the volunteers. We need to expand that program to help residents fully access all of the rebates and incentives that are available to them. We need to save money and be healthier. We need to enact our zero waste plan. Oh my gosh, of course I don't have enough time, 2 minutes to talk about all of this. We need to develop and implement an urban forest master plan. And most importantly, I've got to get this in, transportation. We have to have a transportation plan. We absolutely do. This is not just about getting people to move to electric EVs. Lexington's leading in that. We need to talk about expanding public and private mass transit. We need to critically talk about bike and pedestrian safety and bringing in the bike and ped plan. So there's so many experts on that in town, I know. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
2 minutes just goes fast. All right, so I will not repeat a lot of what my colleague here has said, but I will say that Lexington is seen as a leader in sustainability across the state. This happens over and over again. I'm told we want to do what you're doing. In fact, at the the event Friday morning with the league, the speaker said if everybody was Lexington, we wouldn't be in the predicament we're in. So I want to just say we are doing a lot. Now, we can and we will do more. Cindy has talked a lot about what we've done with the integrated building plan and with our recently approved climate action plan. All of those things are underway. We have in the plan actions, we have in the plan goals, and our staff is already starting to work with Sustainable Lexington to operationalize that. We also need to think about what are the bigger changes that we need to make, and one of those is creating housing which is accessible and is more attainable, is closer to transit, and by definition, when you have smaller units that are closer together within themselves and closer to public transportation, you're going to inherently bring down emissions. We are also, if we can create communities where people can walk to school, walk to work, walk to what their shopping needs are, all of this is going to make real change, and it is going to be inherent in what we are doing. The other piece, and Cindy did mention the transportation piece, this is my personal bugaboo, and I know several of you have heard me say this, but since the invention of the car, my view is that we as a country have gotten this exactly backwards. We have said that it is everybody's burden through the federal, state, and local taxes to pay for the infrastructure to support single occupancy vehicles, but somehow or other public transportation should be sustained on a fair basis. And I mean that F-A-R-E, not F-A-I-R. We are making progress on that. This year, the select board voted to reduce the cost of LexPress to a single $20 annual pass. And we have seen leaps and bounds increase in ridership on LexPress. That kind of innovation is going to make a difference. We also, I'm going to be done in 1 second, are in process on several different collaborative efforts and grant proposals that we are expecting to hear shortly, which will give us opportunity to integrate our public transportation, which could connect us with our neighbors in the region. We aren't getting more money from the MBTA right now. They're trying to put out a literal fire. So we are looking at what we can do collaboratively with our neighbors and with our opportunities through grants and other ways to create more public transportation at a lower cost, support our sidewalk budget, by the way, which includes both annual maintenance and expansion as well as large project expansions. And these come up at town meeting every year. Go look, check out the budgets, check out the votes, see where things are happening, and understand that this is how we're really going to make a bigger difference.
Thank you. Helen for the planning board.
Thank you, Ali. So for our next question for the planning board candidates, we'll go in the order of Tina, Lane, Michael, and Melanie. And many residents in town are concerned about the overly large new constructions, especially when the tear downs are replaced by houses 3 or 4 times or sometimes 5 times bigger than the original. So last year, town meeting member Matt Daggett brought forward Article 40. That would result in slightly small new constructions. And the select board voted to refer it back to itself, which means it wouldn't go anywhere. And how did you vote on Article 40 last year? And as a planning board member and or as a town meeting member, and why?
I was a town meeting member last year, and I voted in support of last year's Article 40. I would like to use a quote by Matt Daggett from his presentation to answer the question. This article aims to address the trend of ever larger homes replacing smaller ones after teardowns. This pattern has repeatedly been identified as a resident concern, included in the recent townwide survey and comprehensive plan, because it erodes the community's smaller, more affordable housing stock and the town's green space. This isn't some attempt to preclude development. It's a really modest reduction that's responding to 2 comprehensive plans and 30 years of feedback from the community about overly large new construction in Lexington. Oh, my sister's calling me, sorry. I felt that personally I've heard this concern repeated to me for many years. This concern was one I shared and was partially the motivation behind my attempt to extend the demolition delay in a citizen's article back in 2015 that failed. We as a town have seen the elimination of smaller housing stock in Lexington, which represents the missing middle, workforce housing, and we have lost them at a rate of 80 to 100 homes each year. I was very relieved when town meeting voted to support Robert Rothberg's article this year to extend the demolition delay. I have to talk faster. With the MBTA Communities Act, we can see a revitalization of our commercial districts, bustling with mixed-use developments. And through the judicious use of municipal planning and project review, we can maintain our community cohesiveness and lush green spaces. We need to welcome and promote citizen participation in the planning process and not tell them that their ideas are not baked when the impressive amount of data that's been presented shows otherwise. We all see the basic human need for and moral imperative to create desirable, affordable housing. Thank you.
I voted yes on Article 40. I think it was long overdue, as it has been a concern by many residents for 30 years, and that the planning board should have addressed it, but did not. I was surprised by the negative reaction by the planning board last year on this article, which spurred me, for many of you may have known, which spurred me to run for the planning board, because I felt that all articles proposed by citizens or by the planning board should be reviewed and held to the same standard. I'm very happy that the town meeting listened to the residents and voted to approve the article.
So yes, when I was on the planning board last spring, I voted to refer this back to the board. And the reason that we did that, and I did that specifically, I should speak only for myself, not for the rest of the board, was because there were some changes that happened fairly late in the process that we were slightly concerned about. There were also some things that we also wanted to consider. The way that we calculate FAR in Lexington, we include things like porches. We also include basement space. And I think the sort of impetus of Article 44 was that we're trying to reduce the mass of these buildings. And things like porches are actually quite good when we think about trying to create communities. Also, basements don't really have an effect on the mass. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into these things, and that's not to say that Mr. Daggett did not take into account a great deal of that nuance, but there were a few things that the board was a little bit concerned about and wanted to continue to do some work on. So yes, I did vote to refer that back to the planning board. That being said, I think that when we talk about the loss of smaller houses in the town, we need to look at the bigger picture and the bigger picture of all of Greater Boston and the sort of economic pressures that the housing crisis has put on all of the towns, not just Lexington. And we have created our own problem by making the school system as great as it is. Everybody wants to live here because they all want to send their kids to school here, and they can then afford 6,000 square foot houses. And as a result, we lose our capes and things like that. So when we think about balanced housing, as Ms. Thompson has described, we need to think about ways that we encourage developers to build smaller units so that our town staff and our teachers and our firefighters and our police officers can all live in town. And that's how we create a diverse town, is by allowing those smaller units to come in. But we also have to understand that single-family residential may not be the way to do that. And reducing the overall scale of that doesn't necessarily solve the housing crisis. Thank you.
Okay, so Article 40 affects only new or reconstructed 1- and 2-family homes in conventional developments. It has no effect on development under any of the alternative types of developments that the planning board has supported in recent years, such as open space or special residential developments. So the planning board asked that Article 40 be referred back because of the last-minute changes that were made during a hearing, which we had insufficient time to consider. We also wanted to take a broader look at how we calculate and use the GFA, such as whether, as Michael said, to include the basement and or porch. The planning board and most importantly the town staff did not have sufficient time to consider the interaction of the proposed change with other provisions in the zoning bylaw, or to understand the effect on the housing market in Lexington. So it's not as though we said, no, we don't want that. We said, and the vote was unanimous, we want to understand it better. There were revisions to the proposal made between February and March 1st that required careful consideration. And it wasn't possible when the changes were received on the day before the March 1st hearing. We also felt that the public needed time to understand the latest changes as well. I thought that we had a lot of zoning changes last year, as you know, and I very much wanted the MBTA and the SBRD articles to pass town meeting. I think they're very important to the town. They both do the things that we want, which is to build more housing in town that is smaller than 6,000 square feet and gives us more density to attract a more economically diverse population. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tina, Lynn, Michael, and Melanie. Before I pass it over to Mona, I would just say, oh, Christina's gonna, okay, all right. So I just want to let everybody know that the samosas are here and we have lots of other snacks too. So please feel free to grab something.
Okay, bonus round. I'll talk a little bit to say that everybody, the partner organizations came together to put some questions to curate for the candidates. We also took questions from the community through our Google form, and to folks out there in TV land, thank you for those. We also collected some questions tonight from folks, this afternoon from folks, that we'd like to pose to the candidates. There are a lot of questions that we have, so we're not, in the essence of time, going to be able to get to everybody's questions. So we're going to start with one question for each group, and then we're going to try to figure out how to collect all these other questions that we have and offer them up with answers to folks. So apologies for not being able to get to everybody's questions. Some we actually combined in the essence of time. We also have one that's a request. In respect to all of the tree bylaws that are out there, nexttrees.org is a resource for folks. The first step, according to this person, is first step to sustainability equals trees and think climate change. So with that, I'm going to start with the school committee. And this has to do with learning from past students who might have been marginalized. Will you consider outreach to former students to share their experiences with racism, ableism, homophobia, and other forms of bigotry? And the person who went, you got that, you got it, go.
Oh, okay. Yes, absolutely. I can't think of anything more helpful than learning from the people who have been down the path. To say, you've been there, you've seen what happens. How can we learn from your experience? How can we take what the challenges you faced and help the students who are coming up behind you so that they can have a different experience? You know, we're never going to get it perfect. We're never going to get it right. But we can always be striving to improve and doing better for each one of our students. And our Lexington students are amazing. They are great. They are thoughtful. They are insightful. And I have no doubt that they can be an invaluable resource for us.
So whoever thought of that idea, kudos. That is an amazing idea. We just have to figure out how to operationalize it, because I think it is a really, really important group that can tell us so much about our schools and just their lives through it. And I seem to be doing a lot of plugging of my website, so I'm so sorry. But and she's got a website, and this is coming. So last year I ran and organized a competition called, it was an essay competition for our kids called My Truth Is, and that is where I was trying to do exactly that. I was trying to take their testimonies and have it in a form that people could understand what our kids go through, whether it's a joyous occasion or whether it's a difficulty. And these children were so honest. Some of them brought tears to my eyes, and other readers, and laughter. And these are the kinds of ways that we need to incorporate that information. And the hurt that children have felt, and now they're graduates, still is something which is, I mean, I don't know what to say. As a parent, I feel for those kids. The only way we can ameliorate it at this point is at least to include and highlight their voices, and have their experiences go to the greater good, so that we prevent it ever happening again. So thank you for that idea. If people have ideas how to operationalize it, let's do it.
Thank you, Christina. What I didn't tell before when I said I had a background in pharmaceuticals is I used to be, when I lived in Sweden, a brand manager for Prozac. As such, I spent days, actually sometimes weeks, in locked facilities talking directly to patients that have depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, anorexia, bulimia. I found it always so incredibly interesting to sit down face to face and talk to these people and listen. More listen than talking. And it's dear to my heart to understand what people that suffer, what's going on. Well, I want to hear. What can I do to help? And in this case, when you say past students, well, how would I connect to them? I don't know. Through my coming website, maybe. It's easy to say, it's hard to do, but I'm open for it. I would love to sit down and talk to anyone who would like to share my experiences.
The next question, if you just pass it down to the select board. Joe, we got the mic. Go with it. Can you tell us what the town is doing to prepare for the tax burden, or should be doing to prepare for the tax burden, which is coming with the new high school?
Absolutely. So I will say a couple of things. First of all, you already invoked Jesse Steigerwald. So Jesse Steigerwald was on the school committee. I was on capital expenditures. We put our heads together and said, you know what? The capital plan goes out 5 years. That is not long enough to include the projection of the high school, but we all know it's coming and we've got to start talking about it. So I stood up in my capital expenditures chair report to town meeting in 2013 and said, we're going to put a number on this and we're going to start talking about the number and we're going to start planning for the number. And back then the number that I used was Somerville High School, which at the time was being built for 1,600 students at the whopping, frightening cost of $198 million. Don't we all wish we could do that? So that's piece one. We started planning for this 10 years ago. Piece two, we have a very sophisticated planning capability in our financial staff. So our financial staff has started looking at when the debt exclusions that we voted in the earlier part of this century for the earlier school buildings and other buildings that we did are going to trickle down. And I don't mean to be pedantic. If you know this already, ignore me. If you don't, it's important to understand. When you vote for an operating override, it includes an increase to the base of our taxes and our budget, which then continues in perpetuity. When you vote for a debt exclusion, it only lasts for the duration of the debt on that specific project. So when a project is done, I'm sorry, give me another minute. Because this is important for people to understand. When the project is done, the debt disappears. So we have a budget, we have a tax rate that's here. It's including a bunch of different debt for various projects. As that comes down, we have timed the high school to come in then. So no, we're not going to get the benefit of the decreasing debt, but we're also not going to get, the vertical trajectory of the increasing debt because we're going to feather that in. So that's two. The third thing was the creation of the Capital Stabilization Fund, which takes not just biotech and life sciences, but it was actually tagged to the specific renovation I'll call it, revision to the zoning bylaws that we did, which covered in particular our commercial areas of Hartwell and Hayden and Waltham Street, which have largely but not exclusively been biotech. If, however, something else gets built up there and that increase in our tax rate is attributable to that zoning, that goes into the stabilization fund also. So that's another piece that is also, and we've got over $20 million in that right now towards the decrease of the obligation of the debt that's associated with this. The fourth thing in this is brand new. The governor in her Municipal Empowerment Act and her budget bills that she just released a week ago is looking to the legislature to provide for an extension of the debt bonding for school buildings from a maximum of 30 years to 40 years. And that is much more realistic for the life of a school building, and if that goes through, we will be able to also recalculate and spread the cost over 40 years of taxpayers and school parents and school children and a community, and that also will help. So I know it was a little over time, but I think it's really important for everybody to understand every one of those component pieces.
I'm glad people are getting samosas. I want to say, before I get into answering that question, thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you so much. All of the sponsoring organizations did a great job, but it's because of you, right? It's because of you as citizens that are having the patience to sit through this and listen to all of our answers. And maybe you only came to hear one of, you were only interested in one of these races, but I hope that you go away learning something today and vote. So important. Anyway, so I had mentioned this before. I mentioned about the capital stabilization fund, but I also mentioned about reducing the cost of the high school. So if we don't have to borrow as much, then we don't have to, pay as much. So it's going to be very, very important to think about how we can reduce the cost of that high school. And thinking about the future and planning for the future and having a vision for the future in how we build that high school is really, really important. I talked about getting money from all different sources because we're going to build it to the standards that we want, which takes advantage of the free energy that's up in the sky, right? That takes advantage of talking about battery storage, which cuts shaves peak load. We can talk about. I can explain what that is later. But these are really, really important things to cut down on the cost of the high school. And about the capital stabilization fund, we do need to pay attention to making sure that we have that major commercial development continue here in town in order to help support it. So we have to pay attention to that. Thank you.
Next one for the planning board, and I'll tell you, you guys are a fan favorite here. The development at 69 Pleasant Street resulted in almost 5 acres of clear-cutting trees and maximizes single-family multi-million-dollar homes. How can future planning board do better for environment and housing?
Am I up with
Yes.
the first one? 69 Pleasant Street. Okay, so let's see, I have a lot of notes on here, but I'm trying to make it as quick as possible. But that is an alternative to the conventional subdivision. So this is a site-sensitive development. With construction, you will have noise, but the reason that if I'm trying to remember, when they came before the planning board, that it was for a site sensitive as opposed to conventional is because it would have been even more destructive if it was conventional. What it does as a site sensitive, it saves the old house that's there, because in one or two of the public meetings, the neighbors were concerned about the architecture. So with the site sensitive, he'll be able to build a few contemporary homes. There were several public meetings, and the neighbors did say what they wanted and didn't want. We checked with the building commissioner, and he said the developer went by the plans. So what you're seeing taken out is not what is going to be going in. There were a lot of trees taken out, and we saw that on the landscaping plan. But there are many trees that are going in. In fact, I wrote this down, he removed 190 trees, he saved 104 trees, and he's replanting 79 trees. And then he paid almost $4,000 into the town tree fund for removing the trees. So it's almost a wash. It's very, I understand, it's very annoying to see something going on, but I hope, once he gets further along, we will see something better happen.
Yeah, so Melanie's absolutely right. We need to understand what the alternative was that was essentially presented to us. The alternative is that it would have been a by right conventional subdivision. That would have resulted in far more blasting than what we had. It also would have resulted in 4 curb cuts on Pleasant Street at a location that we know has a very high accident rate already, that the town is, investigating alternates for that intersection. So by going with the site-sensitive development approach, which, yes, we can focus on the fact that it says site-sensitive, and then we look at the site and it doesn't seem very site-sensitive, but nonetheless, the idea is that we got them to have a single curb cut. We also had them pull the sight line back for the entry to that development, all because of the sort of site plan review that we did. As Melanie's pointed out, we got a lot of neighbor feedback as far as what the buildings would actually look like. It does sit right across from some mid-century modern. So the initial houses along the edge, those will be these sort of mid-century modern houses, and then they will be transitional back towards the existing house. The existing house remains. We get an affordable unit in that. All of those things would not have happened if it had been a conventional subdivision. And that is the kind of choice that we have to make all the time when we're on the planning board. They are not always easy decisions, and sometimes they result in things that people feel are unfortunate, particularly when we see all of those trees go, but they would have all gone if it had been a conventional subdivision as well, and we would have ended up in exactly the same place. We end up with a better project because we use the bylaws that we have said, that we passed in town meeting. Thank you.
Hi. I think it's interesting that this project has not broken any rules. That's one thing. And then this is the time when we look at the rules. Are they great rules? Are they good enough rules? I was told Lexington has the most highest rate of Nobel Prize winners per square foot. I heard it's 11, maybe more, maybe less. So are we satisfied with the answer that it could be worse, we did our best? Or we built a feedback loop saying, yes, we did our best, absolutely, with the existing rules. But is there anything we can do to make the rules better? And I think one of my passion is that about trees. Actually, my name, if you know my Chinese name, is has trees in it. The point is that if I were elected, if I am elected on the planning board, I will work closely with the tree community. I'm going to work with every one of you. I think we had to be creative. We had to work hard on what can we do to encourage more trees planted if they have to blast. So I just did a quick math. Thank you, Melanie, for the number of trees. If they cut down, they kept 109, they cut down 104. Then they planted 79. I think they're missing quite many. And $4,000 is not a lot of money for that amount of development. Can we ask for planting more trees? Because the trees they are replacing are not baby trees. They are trees very big. So can we not asking the number of trees replaced, but calculate the, what do you call that? The size of the trees. And then say you had to replace with the same size. If one tree, you're planting baby trees, maybe every 3 trees, for one old tree you cut. So then we have a win-win. So do we have to choose between development and trees? I think we have to compromise, I agree. But here's where creativity is needed, and we have to do it. If Lexington cannot do it, I don't know anywhere can do it. You are all smart people. Maybe you're all smarter than me. I'm counting on you. If I were elected, I want to talk to all of you. Tree committee, Lex Tree advocates, let's work together. Let's figure out to do something and change our rules.
Caliber. That's the word you're looking for. I agree with Michael that anyone that's seen this site, I've heard a few people say that there was nothing sensitive about it. I've heard it described as greenscape or gravel pit and things like that. There's always this threat, I hate to use the word threat, but there's always a threat that we hear when we go to planning board meetings, that if we don't do it like this, then developers will just do a conventional development. The reality is that I think that if you look at any of the numbers, any of the development over the last 20 years, developers prefer more dense development. They get bonuses when they do dense development. It benefits them in a number of ways to do dense development over conventional. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this. Enforcement is a difficulty. There are rules for blasting. It was pushed by many residents, saying that the rules that we have currently just don't work. And again, I think that we don't do a good enough job here in Lexington listening to concerns of residents, and often at the cost of people's quality of life. No one wants to hear blasting, no one wants their glasses rattling, no one wants it waking their kids up. It's difficult. Sorry, talking too long. I think that it's really important that we do listen to citizenry. We make this huge effort to put together this comprehensive plan, and we need to do a better job of listening and responding to the concerns and the vision of Lexington.
Thank you so very much. With that, I think we have to conclude this afternoon in the essence of time. Everyone who is running for town member, could you just stand up? Town meeting member, could you please stand up and wave? Do a little dance. Thank you. As someone who doesn't run for town meeting, I'm grateful. I'm also very grateful for everybody running here, not only putting in the time that it took to get to today, to get to the election and more of these, but also even thinking of volunteering for even more work. As a community, we're very grateful, so thank you. Feel free to network, chat with each other, get to know your neighbors, and just say once a motion for me. Thank you.